Hi everybody, it's Sarah Curry with Let's Make Art, and today we are doing our February watercolor calendar project. Ah! I love this project so much because when I think about February, obviously there's Valentine's Day, but also I wanted to do a project that was like a nod at Valentine's Day, but not like only Valentine's Day.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? Like I
right.
still wanted to fit it in seasonally with winter. And so I came up with this idea of doing like a frosted heart-shaped leaf. Okay?
Okay.
Um, we're going to be doing this project in 5 steps. So there's no outline. I'll show you how to sketch this. Our second step is we're going to paint the background. And while the background is still wet, we're going to put in our snow, our bokeh, and some background branches. Our third step is we are going to paint our heart. Our fourth stamp is we're going to put in our fourth. Did I say stamp?
Or STEM, I didn't I
Our fourth step is we'll put in our foreground branch. And then our very last step is just the finishing details like the frosty snow, some leaf veins, all that kind of stuff. Okay?
and step 6, call someone and tell them you love them.
Oh, that's such a good step.
Thank you.
I love it. We'll list everything that we're using in the description, but please just use what you have. Okay? It doesn't have to be the same. Use what you have. Use it. All right. Let's do our oath.
Okay.
So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me, I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
I promise to have fun.
Now grab a pencil. And if you don't know, we do a series every month. Every month we do a calendar painting together. We make these beautiful watercolor calendars that are dateless, which I personally love because then there's no pressure, and they can last for as long as you want. So this way, this is watercolor paper and this is watercolor paper. So you can even paint individual little scenes on here if you want, or just this main big one. It's totally up to you. You can find those at letsmakeart.com. Okay, now for the sketching part. Let me move this so you can see both. Basically, I want to think about compositionally where I want my heart to be. You're going to have a tendency to put your branch in first, and you're going to want to put your branch in down here, which if you do that, that's fine. But then your heart is going to be down here, and that's going to feel really off. So I want you to start with where you want your heart to be. So I'm going to have the heart be kind of in the center, kind of going off to this side, just like that.
You're so good at those first shot.
What?
I just have trauma about drawing hearts. I remember 2nd grade. Jessica F. told me
Yeah.
I was bad at them. And now I just appreciate how good you are at drawing hearts right off the bat.
I just want you to know that Jessica F. had a problem with herself
Okay.
and not you. Because when anyone is mean like that, it's their own issue. It's never that it's always about how that person feels about themselves, okay?
All right.
So Jessica F., I really hope that you found healing
Oh my gosh.
with your own hearts.
What if she's watching this?
Then I'm sincere. I hope you found healing with your own hearts. Okay. So I'm just going to, and then with your first run through, if you don't feel very confident about it, there's nothing wrong with doing another little layer on top. Remember, the sketching part is just a basic guide, and you can change anything about it at any time. Even when you go to paint it, you can be like, I actually want this skinnier, all of that kind of stuff. So here is my heart. I like that it's kind of angled personally, but you can leave it straight going down. You can have it angled the other way. This is leaf, so there's not a wrong, okay? Then I'm gonna have my main branch come in, and I'm gonna have it end here. I'm gonna have another smaller branch here, and you can like switch this up. Maybe I'll have a branch come here, okay?
All right.
And here's my stem. Okay, that's it. That's all we're drawing. That's it.
It's perfect.
So now to get to the painting part, you're going to want to use a larger brush to wet the area and then put in the background. So you can use a quill, you can use a long round 10, you can use a round 12. I'll use a round 12 here. And this next part, I'm going to work really quickly because I want to do it while everything is still wet, okay? Now, one thing that I do before I wet the entire background is I'm just going to double check to make sure my tape is solidly adhered to every part of the paper. And I'm going to make sure that my hole is at the top part because it is devastating when you untape and realize that you painted it upside down. So the hole is always at the top, okay?
The calendars are dateless. You could write the dates in upside down for that month and just hang your calendar upside down.
You could. Now, when I go to wet my background, I'm going to wet everything except the heart, okay? If you go into the heart a little bit, that's okay. And actually that is what I'm going to do, because then I know I won't have like a weird white area around my heart. So I'm just taking water with my round 12 and wetting the entire page with clean water. Okay. Now I want a gray color. So usually when I'm mixing a gray, I'm just pulling whatever mess is on my palette. So I obviously have some blue here. Let's see if you can go straight with, this is like indigo, watered down. You can also add a little bit of like hue burnt orange if you want it to be more of a neutral gray. And I'm not worried too much about getting a smooth, even wash, okay?
It's a snowstorm, for goodness sake, you
Yeah.
know?
And like the background is fuzzy, and you're gonna see we're gonna put in bokeh and tree branches and all of this kind of stuff. Also, notice that like sometimes you add a little bit of a wash and it's a slightly different color. Oh well, like that. Then I just like bring it over here and have some of that color over there. So it's really not a big deal. I don't want you to stress about this part. Okay. And then I'm gonna do another layer. And the reason why I'm doing another layer is because watercolor has a tendency to lighten as it dries. And I want to like let the bokeh show up. And so I have to make sure my background is like a medium light value at least in order for the bokeh to be obvious. Okay.
Listen, Jessica F. also told me in 5th grade that yo-yos weren't cool.
That yo-yos weren't cool.
Yeah. Jessica F.
I really hope that she's okay.
We
It's just mean.
should buy her a heart-shaped yo-yo.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Now, quickly moving on. I'm going to grab some bleed proof white and a not super nice brush. I'm going to hit that bleed proof white in, and I'm going to flick some bleed proof white. I always do a test on my palette to make sure that the consistency is what I want it to be. If it's not, if the things are too small, then you're going to need a little bit more water and a little bit more paint. If your drops are too big, then that's when you're going to want to dry out your brush a bit more, or alleviate some of that bleed proof white. So even just doing a couple of this on your palette is enough to get rid of those big blotchy first strokes. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm. A brush size matters too, right?
Yes. So if you want them to be obviously bigger, then you would get a bigger brush because that can hold more water and more paint, which is why it's bigger drips.
Got you.
Okay, that's good. And remember, we're working quick, so we got to go. Now we're going to do my liner, and I'm going to do branches. So I'm going to mix Q burnt orange with lamp black or indigo, just any kind of darker value. And then very lightly, I'm just going to put in some branches, and they can be going all over.
These are backgroundy branches.
These are background branches, so they're going to fuzz out, and we're okay with that. We don't want them too dark because we don't want them to fight with the foreground branch. Okay, just like that. That's it. And notice that when I'm doing branches, I allow there to be a little bit of a wiggle with it, okay?
Mhm.
Embrace the wiggle for branches. It really makes them feel real. Now I'm going to take a round 6. You can use a long round 10. You can use a round 12. Just be careful of your bokeh circles. And then I'm going to get clean water on it, on my brush. And then I'm just going to circle, lift, circle, lift. And this is how I get bokeh. Now there's lots of tutorials of how to do bokeh. A really easy way is to take like a dime and wrap it in a paper towel and just stamp.
Mm.
The only reason why I don't care for that method is because it really does lift up all of the paint. And I like my bokeh to be softer than that. Like, I like the edges to be softer, all of that kind of stuff. And so I have found just lifting out the color with the damp brush gives me the bokeh look that I prefer. Now, I will admit that this is a totally personal preference. So if you like the really like clean look of just lifting it out with a coin, or just the simplicity of it, there's nothing wrong with that. Another way that you can do it is by letting your paper dry and then using like a circle helix tool to lift color out like you're tracing it. Again, I don't really care for that way because I have found that if the paper is dry and then I try to lift it out with water, I get a hard edge
Hmm.
on my bokeh. And I don't like that. So this is what I like to do. I will say though that one of the things about doing it this way is that sometimes the paint will seep back in. Do you see how that is not as bold as this one because that was one of the first ones I removed?
Hmm.
So sometimes if I see that, I'll just go back in and kind of lift out again. Or I'll just be like, well, that's just a softer bokeh circle. And that's okay.
If you're a camera nerd and you want to get hyper realistic bokeh, you would do circles towards the middle. And then as your bokeh balls were towards the outside of your painting, you do them more football shaped where they have like little points kind of.
Oh, really?
I mean, on most modern lens designs, that's a artifact of what happens. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Okay. I'm just doing a few here and there. Nothing too crazy. Don't forget about the edges of your paper though. And maybe I should do like, I don't like that it's like two, 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 two. So maybe I'll do one right here.
I really want one on the top right.
Top right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the best part of being married to a painter. I could just say what I like.
And sometimes I go, okay. And then sometimes I go, well, great. You can go paint that.
Go ahead. Here's all the stuff.
Go right ahead. Okay. That's it. That is step one, which is actually the majority of this painting. Now we let this baby dry. So I'm going to use my heated craft tool. Now, after your paper has dried, and I do the very professional way of checking by touching it, it's dry.
Try.
Now I'm going to paint the heart. So the colors that I'm using for the heart, personally, I like a red that leans warm, which means I'm going to have a little bit of Q gold in there to add some warmth to my heart. You might like a red that leans pink or leans purple. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So you choose the heart color or the red color that you prefer. I'm going to start with Q coral. And I'm going to start with doing a light wash of Q coral. And you can see that when you add water to Q coral, where's your mother? It's very pink, which again is not bad. But for me, I'm like, let's add some warmth to that. So I'm going to take some Q gold. And I'm going to do a lighter value on the inside of the heart or the inside of the leaf. And then I'm going to do a darker value along the edges. And in order to get a darker value of paint, I'm just picking up more paint on my brush, essentially.
I have what is going to seem like a silly question, but I'm serious.
Okay.
Is gold orange?
Q gold. Is Q gold orange? Is that what you're asking?
Is gold orange?
Oh, wait. Is Q gold orange or is gold
I'm not sure.
orange?
I don't know, because like when you say gold, I'm like, okay, I think of gold as yellow, but the gold color that we use, I feel looks orange.
It does, but I have a tendency to go for yellows that lean more orange in general.
Okay.
That's why most of the time I like to use Hansa yellow medium. Cad yellow is probably like the coolest yellow that I use.
Okay, and you never mess with lemon yellows and stuff. You don't
I
go.
don't, but I really feel like I need to give it a second go.
Okay, so this gold is orange, really.
So the Q gold that I use does lean really, really warm, more towards an orange, but I don't consider it orange. Okay. So there, and it's okay if you get an unevenness in your wash because again, this is a leaf, all right? And if you look at leaves, they all have this kind of like texture element to them. Now, I want to do even darker edge, so I'm going to take my Q coral and actually grab a tiny bit of Q purple, or you can do a tiny bit of indigo. I also love a red that leans like purple brown, and that aligns with our leaf shape or our leaf like coloring. So I'm going to take this darker red, and then I'm going to add a tiny bit of serration, which is kind of like a jaggedy edge on my leaf just to give it a stronger leaf feel. Again, that's a personal preference to make it feel more like a leaf. If you want it to be a nice, round, juicy heart, you don't have to do the serration. And I'm just taking a round two and kind of just letting this jaggedy edge come out. Like so. And then I'm going to go even wilder with my red and yellow on some of this. I'm just going to smear it around. Okay? Again, be okay with unevenness, blooms, all of that kind of stuff.
What a great red.
Isn't it?
Makes me want a cherry slushy.
Yeah.
Must be getting close to lunchtime.
Do a little bit darker here.
Nope, it's 9 a.m. still.
I'm like, no, it is not close to lunchtime, but I wasn't going to break your heart.
I just had to look. Like, is it lunch?
Okay. Maybe a little bit here at the top. Now, the nice thing too is, let's say you do a serrated edge and it looks really wonky. We're going to add snow on top. And so you can cover up any edges you don't like with bleed-proof white. We don't need to let this dry because we're going to go directly into painting the branch. So I'm going to take my liner brush. Where did I put you? Here you are. And I'm going to use dark brown. And again, I'm using Q Burnt Orange and Lamp Black or Indigo. Like, both will work. But what you want to make sure here is that the brown that you're using is going to be a darker value than whatever your background branches are. Because we added the branches when the background was wet, they actually diffused out really nicely. They turned fuzzy, they turned a lighter value. That's exactly what we wanted. Even if some got a lot thicker, that's okay because, again, branches come in different thicknesses depending on how old the tree is. The biggest thing is value-wise, it's lighter. That's really all we care about. It's okay if it looks wonky. It's okay if it's thicker. It just needs to be lighter. Now I'm going to take my liner brush and I'm going to follow the outline that I have here. And don't be afraid of a little wonk in your branches. Now you can see that I lifted up, or I got some like dryness here. So I'm just going to go over it again. The biggest thing is when we get to the branches that are kind of coming out at the end, those need to be narrower. We want, basically, as the branch gets closer to the trunk, it gets thicker. Or the opposite way is, as the branch moves away from the tree, it gradually gets thinner. Okay? So here is like the thickest element of my branch. I don't want any other branch to be thicker than this right here. And now I'm going to use the tip of my brush, and you can see that I'm not resting my wrist. So then I can go for a long, thin line as long as I need to because I'm not limited by how far my wrist can reach out. So I'm going to do light pressure, do a pinpoint tip of my brush. And there is the end of the branch there. And I'm going to do another branch coming out here. And you can see that actually the transition from this thickness to this one is pretty extreme. So sometimes you have to like allow there to be a little bit thicker there. There you go. And then let's actually have a branch come out this way. And you can be as like, we'll have a branch go this way. You can do that as much as you want. The next thing I'm going to do for these branches is, if you look at branches, they have these little knots. Nodes? Is that what they are?
Mm-hmm.
Are you so impressed that I knew that?
I am. Nodes are undifferentiated cells that can either turn into more branch structures or leaf structures usually.
Oh, good to know.
Mm-hmm. When you're making a cutting of a plant, all you people who like plants at home, make sure you grab a node with the cutting you take because that's what it needs to grow roots.
Okay. Good to know. Good to node.
Wow.
Okay, and now I'm going to do the stem from the branch to my heart. Oh, my heart. There we go. Okay, now this last part is what's going to tie everything together. And Michael, before we started this, he looked at this. He was just like, this would be super cute for like fall too.
Yeah, that's a great fall painting.
Yes, which I thought was such a great idea. I was like, oh, funny.
Oh,
Good idea. But when you add things like snow to a painting, it just gives it a mood. It just brings it together. I'm obsessed with flicking bleed proof white on literally every winter painting I do.
And a laptop you have.
Yes. My poor like iPads and cell phones are just covered in paint.
Listen, if they aren't going to pass the gauntlet, they don't deserve to be out here, you know?
If you're gonna be used by an artist, you just gotta get used to that. Okay, so let's add some veins on our leaves. I'm gonna use that same liner. I'm gonna just take a red. You can mix it with a little bit of Q Gold or a little bit of purple, depending on if you want it to lean warm or cool. And I'm just gonna add a main vein. Let's make this a little bit darker. Coming down the center of the heart. And again, this is me trying to make this look more like a leaf. That is a design decision on my part or an artistic decision. You do not have to do that. And then I'll do the little side veins coming out from the center. And again, these are very, very tiny, like thin, delicate. So I'm just using really light pressure and the tip of my liner brush just to do that work. Another thing that you can do is, if you've done this trick before, is while the heart is wet, you flip your brush over and use the handle to draw, okay? I did not do that this time because sometimes I can't, when I use the handle of my brush to draw, I can't get as delicate of lines. Sometimes they just stay nice and like too thick. And I really wanted these veins to read as delicate. So that's why I chose not to do that. But you can absolutely do that if that feels more comfortable to you. And then on some of these veins, you can go a little bit thicker or darker, just like that. Okay. Now we get to add the snow. So I'm taking bleed proof white, a not very expensive brush. I'm just going to dip it right in. I'm going to have snow on top of my branch. So I'm just picking up bleed proof white, kind of smearing it on top. You can decide how thick your snow is. Boop, 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 boop. And it's okay if some parts of the snow are a little bit thicker than others. That is true to how snow falls. Don't forget, like anywhere that there's branches coming off this main branch, you're going to want to put that on there. And then I'm going to do the gathering of snow on the top of my leaf here. And then if you want to do it along the edge, as if like snow has frozen. And this is true, and I didn't know that this existed till I moved to Missouri and I experienced an ice storm where literally every single thing was covered in a thin layer of ice and snow.
It's very beautiful to look at. Very not fun to be in.
It's not fun to drive in, but it sure is pretty
Yeah.
because it just like glistens, every blade of grass. Okay, now we are going to flick some bleed proof white onto our painting. So again, get my brush wet, dip it in the bleed proof white. I'm going to do a test on my palette. This shows me how thick they'll be. Okay. Now, these are reading pretty small, and the reason why they're reading so small is look how small the brush is I'm using for that bleed proof white.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, because these are the foreground snowflakes, I want them to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to grab a larger brush. Let's do a round 12. Now, round 12s are really big. So that's where it's really important that you do a test on your palette because you might get a huge one. Those are actually pretty good. If you want some that are bigger, you can pick up more paint, or you can even do a few bigger just strokes throughout. These are the big snowflakes. Like so. Isn't it so cute?
It's perfect.
Now, I just decided to do another layer, and I love it. I'm showing you one way of how you can approach this. Just know that there's so many ways, there's so many options. Do you like salt? Sprinkle in some salt. You want to do some hearts in the background, add a focus like other leaves on branches? Go for it. You want to change the to a night scene? Great. You want to like have it be a sunsetty background? Beautiful. Like this is just a foundation for you to take this idea and say, I wonder how I can change this to something that is interesting or meaningful to me. It doesn't even have to be like super special. It could just be you following your curiosity. And you allowing yourself to follow your curiosity is how you're going to stay creative in your life, honestly. So, like, whenever you hear that little nudge, I wonder what happens if I do that, go for it. Because even if it doesn't turn out, you learn something new and you indulged your inner artist. And that is the only way that you are going to stay consistent in your practice. If you never indulge your inner artist, then you're going to get bored of it and you're going to move on to something else. Okay. So allow yourself to embrace those little nudges. Okay.
All right.
All right. That's it. That's our project. I had so much fun with it. And then one last thing that I want to say. These are watercolor calendars, so obviously when you put water to the paper, they're going to warp a little bit. If you want to minimize warping, you are going to want to do an extra layer of tape at this stage right now, and do not untape it until the next day. But I did that yesterday, and look how flat this is
Oh, nice.
because I left it taped for 24 hours. So I would do an extra layer of reinforcement. And you don't even have to use painter's tape since you have the nice tape on the paper. You can use any tape as long as it's not touching the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to keep it nice and flat while it fully dries. Okay?
Okay.
And then that way your calendars are going to turn out more flat than if you were to just untape it right now.
All right.
All right?
Sounds great.
Okay. Thank you so much for painting with me. If you want to see what we painted for January, you can paint that. I have it written. We have that tutorial up, and every month we will be painting a new one. It was January's.
Lovely.
January, February. So cute.
So cute.
All right. Thank you guys so much. If you need these calendars, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. We'll see you later. Bye.